My golden child stepbrother framed me for cheating on my girlfriend. She dumped me, and my dad still defended him. Years later, they came crawling to me for help. Hey, Reddit, ever been the invisible kid in your own family? That was me, Rob, 32 male. But dad's real pride and joy was my stepbrother, Drake, 34 male. I could land a raise. He could barely pass a class, and guess who got the standing ovation every time? I learned to live with it, until Drake decided to get involved in my relationship in a way that blew it apart and made sure everyone thought it was my fault. I walked away, built my own life, and never looked back. Until years later, when they came knocking, expecting me to play family again. Let's just say, I didn't walk back in the same guy they remembered. I've always been the other kid in my dad's eyes my whole life. Not the favorite, not the rebel, not the one he brags about, just the one who happens to live there. My stepbrother Drake was the star. 2 years older, louder, more outgoing, and somehow never wrong in dad's eyes. We've had no moms in the picture for years. My mom passed when I was a kid. Drake's mom left when he was a baby, so it was just dad, me, and Drake. And with only one parent, you notice pretty fast who gets the attention. In our house, it was always Drake. Didn't matter what I did. If I got an A, dad would say, "Good job, son," and move on. If Drake barely passed, dad would act like he'd climbed a mountain. Drake could come home bragging about some random sales lead he got, and dad would talk about it for days. If I told him about a raise, he'd nod once and change the subject. Drake knew he was the golden one, and he played into it. He'd smirk whenever dad praised him in front of me, like he was keeping score. I got used to it, but I didn't forget it. I met my girlfriend Maria in my last year of college. She worked part-time at this coffee shop I used to study in. When I introduced her to dad, he gave her that polite smile he gives to people he doesn't really care about. Drake was friendly enough, but there was something in the way he looked at her. Not obvious, just a little too long. I told myself I was imagining it. After I graduated, I got my first real job. It wasn't great money, but it paid the bills. Maria and I moved into a small one-bedroom in the city. I started saving for a ring. Nothing rushed. I just wanted it to be right. During that time, Drake wasn't around much. He popped up at family gatherings, told big stories about work, and then disappeared again. But every so often, he'd bring up Maria. "How's she doing?" Or, "She's still in school." Like he was keeping tabs. Once, in front of Dad, he joked, "Careful, Rob. She might realize she's out of your league." Dad laughed. I didn't, but it stuck with me. By the time Maria was in her final semester, I'd picked out the ring I wanted. That's when Drake started showing up more. Sometimes he'd be at Dad's place when we dropped by. Sometimes he'd call me just to catch up, and it felt random, but I figured he was between jobs again and bored. Looking back, I should have paid more attention. Drake's questions started getting more specific. When Maria would be home, what her schedule was like, whether I'd be around much with work picking up. He played it off like small talk, but Drake never asks about people unless he's got a reason. At the time, I was too focused on the proposal. I'd been working extra hours, trying to make sure everything was lined up. My head was full of plans for the trip, the ring, and the moment I'd ask her. I thought the only thing I had to worry about was making it perfect. I had no idea that Drake was already setting something in motion. Not some harmless prank or petty dig, but something that would take everything I'd been building with Maria and tear it apart in one move. 2. It started with something that, on its own, wouldn't have seemed like much. Maria had just started her final semester, and I was busier than ever at work. My hours were long, and I'd sometimes get home late enough that Maria would already be winding down for the night. I figured the worst thing this would do was make her a little annoyed with me. I didn't know someone else was keeping track of those nights. One Thursday afternoon, I got a text from Drake. "Hey, you home?" I replied that I was at work. "Cool, no biggie. I might swing by your place later, I'm in the area." I didn't think much of it. He dropped in unannounced before, and even though it bugged me, I usually just shrugged it off. I told him Maria would be home if he needed something, and that was that. That night, I came home and everything felt fine. Maria was in the kitchen making pasta. She didn't mention Drake, so I didn't either. I didn't hear about it right away. A week later, I found out what had actually happened. I was at work when I got a call from Maria. Her voice was tight, like she was trying not to snap. "Why did your friend's friend come over here?" she asked. "What friend's friend?" I said. "This girl, Anne. She said she knew you. She came by last week when you weren't home." I paused for a second. "Wait, she came into the apartment?" "Yeah. She said she needed to drop something off for you. Then she sat here and talked to me for 20 minutes before you even got home. It was weird." I told her I had no idea who she was talking about. Maria said Anne mentioned being friends with Drake. Something about that didn't sit right with me. Drake doesn't just send people to my place. And if he does, it's usually some guy trying to sell me on a great side hustle or asking to borrow tools. Sending a random girl? That was new. I called Drake that night. He acted like he barely remembered. "Oh yeah," he said. "Anne's cool. I thought maybe she could help Maria with some job stuff she's into." Chill, man. I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't believe him, but I didn't push. I figured the worst he'd done was try to set Maria up with one of his buddy's friends, maybe as some weird test. Still, it was shady. 2 weeks later, Maria had to go visit her cousin for the weekend. I stayed behind because of work. Saturday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. It was Anne. She was wearing a tight top and jeans, holding some random envelope in her hand. "Hey," she said, smiling. "Drake said you could help me with some papers for a rental thing." I told her I was busy and couldn't help. She stepped inside anyway, saying she'd just be a minute. I stood in the middle of the living room, keeping my arms crossed. Anne started making small talk, asking about my job, if Maria and I were serious, if we'd ever thought about moving somewhere bigger. The whole time, I could feel that weird prickling on the back of my neck, the kind you get when someone's watching you. Then it hit me. The door to the hallway was cracked just enough. "Anne, you need to go," I said, pointing at the door. She acted confused. "What? I'm just—" "Now," I said. She grabbed her envelope and left, mumbling something about me being uptight. I walked over and shut the door fully. Didn't see anyone out there, but the feeling didn't go away. Monday evening, Maria came home from class looking cold. No kiss, no smile. She sat down on the couch and told me we needed to talk. Then she pulled out her phone. On it was a video, grainy but clear enough, of me standing in the living room while Anne was way too close to me. It looked like she was laughing at something I said. From the angle, you couldn't see me telling her to leave. You couldn't see my crossed arms. It looked like we were just standing there together, alone, in my apartment. Maria said Drake had found the video. "He told me he didn't want to get involved," she said, "but he thought I deserved to know." I laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because of how obvious it was. "You really believe this?" I asked. "I saw it," she said flatly. "And you didn't mention she came over again." "Because nothing happened," I said. "She came in, I told her to leave, she left. That's it." Maria shook her head. "Drake said you've been acting different, that maybe you're not ready to settle down. I thought he was being overprotective, but now—" "Overprotective?" I said. "Maria, he sent her here." "That's not what he said." "Of course it wasn't." "So you'd believe him over me?" We went in circles for another 10 minutes. She kept coming back to the same line. She couldn't get past what she saw. I couldn't get her to see past what Drake wanted her to believe. By the end of the week, Maria broke up with me and moved out. Dad didn't ask for my side. He didn't even hesitate before saying, "You shouldn't have let her come in, Rob. That's on you." And that was Drake's gift. He didn't just make me look bad. He made sure everyone important in my life thought it was my fault. I thought about calling him out right then and there. But what would it have done? Dad wouldn't believe me. Maria was already gone. And Drake would just smirk and move on with his life like he always did. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last time I'd see Drake for years. The next time we crossed paths, everything would be different. 3. So, after Maria left and Dad made it clear whose side he was on, the apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. It wasn't just her absence. It was knowing the whole reason it happened was because someone I grew up with went out of his way to wreck it. I'd come home from work, drop my keys on the counter, and the silence would feel heavy. No TV in the background, no half-finished coffee mugs on the counter. Just me in a place that suddenly didn't feel like home. It wasn't anger that made me want to leave. It was that feeling when you've hit the end of a rope and there's nothing left to try. My performance at my job went down the hill that I resigned before getting that friendly notice. Dad still called sometimes, but the conversations were short and passive. He'd say things like, "You shouldn't have done that," or "You should learn more for your brother. If he were you, he wouldn't do that." Like he's the one who planned this all and framed it. One night, sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at a pile of laundry I hadn't bothered folding, I realized I didn't have to stay. I had no reason to. Everything keeping me in that city was gone. I needed a new fresh start. I picked up my phone and called my uncle, my mom's brother. We hadn't talked in a while, but he'd always been fair with me. Never made me feel like I had to prove I was worth his time. He picked up quick. "Hey kid, been a while." I told him the short version. I needed a change, I needed work, and I couldn't stay where I was. He didn't ask for details. Just said, "I could use an extra hand at the company. Room's here if you want it. It's not easy work, but it's steady." 2 days later, I was gone. I gave my landlord notice, boxed up the essentials, and stuffed everything I could into my car. The rest I either sold or left behind. The ring went back to the jeweler, took a hit on the restocking fee, but it was better than letting it sit in a drawer. I didn't tell Dad, he wouldn't care anyways. I sure as hell didn't tell Drake. There wasn't going to be some big last confrontation. They didn't deserve that much energy. The first week at my uncle's place was an adjustment. His logistics company was small but busy. Constant movement, trucks coming and going, phones ringing. I started in the warehouse, unloading freight, sorting shipments, and doing inventory. It was exhausting, but it felt good to come home tired from actually doing something, not from dealing with people's nonsense. Nobody there knew about Drake or Maria or the mess I'd left. To them, I was just Rob, the new guy willing to work late and do whatever was needed. That was fine by me. My uncle didn't hand me anything for free. If anything, he expected more because I was family. He was the kind of boss who noticed if you were 5 minutes late and the kind who'd make you redo something if it wasn't done right. I respected that. After a few months, he started letting me handle scheduling and small client accounts. I got a taste of the problem-solving side of the business, figuring out how to move product on time, cut costs, and keep clients happy. I liked that part. It made me feel like I was building something, even if my name wasn't on it yet. 5 years later, I had my own place again. Not some cramped one-bedroom, but a house I could actually be proud of. I'd paid off my car, built a solid savings, and was running a business people in the industry respected. My uncle called me his right-hand man, and clients started coming straight to me. Life was steady, quiet, the kind of life where you don't have to look over your shoulder. Then one night, I ran into someone from my hometown while grabbing dinner. We talked for a bit, caught up, and just before leaving he said, "Didn't know you were cool with Drake dating Maria now." It didn't hit like it would have years ago. I wasn't about to lose sleep over it, but it did land like a reminder. Drake hadn't changed, still taking what wasn't his, still pretending like it was just the way things worked out. I went home that night and sat in the dark for a while. Not angry, not sad, just clear. I'd built a life he couldn't touch, and I had no interest in going back. But deep down, I knew something. One day, whether I wanted it or not, they'd show up in my world again. And when they did, I'd make sure it wasn't on Drake's terms. Turns out, I didn't have to wait forever. Years went by without a word from my dad or anyone on his side of the family. And honestly, I didn't miss it. Life was quieter that way. The longer I stayed away, the more I realized how peaceful life could be when you cut out the people who constantly chipped away at you. My business was running smoothly. My house felt like a place I actually wanted to come home to. And my social circle was full of people who respected me for more than what I could give them. Until the first sign they were circling back. An email from my dad popped up in my inbox with the subject line, "Family Reunion." My first reaction was to hover over the delete button. I hadn't heard from him in forever, and now he wanted me to drive down memory lane with people who'd either ignored me or sided with Drake when he blew up my life. No thanks. The message itself was short and fake-friendly. "Hey Rob, hope you're doing well. We're having a family reunion next month at Uncle Dean's place. It'd be great if you could make it. Everyone would love to see you. Let me know if you can come. Dad." No mention of the past. No acknowledgement of why we hadn't spoken. Just this weird assumption that we could pick up where we left off. I didn't reply. Not because I was mad. I wasn't. I'd just learned not to give people like that an easy opening. But I didn't delete the email either. I left it sitting there, unread in the official sense, like a piece of bait I wasn't ready to bite yet. A few days later, I heard from an old friend from my hometown. We were catching up over the phone, and somewhere in the middle of the conversation, he laughed and said, "Man, I'm surprised you didn't hear already. Drake's a mess these days." That got my attention. He didn't hold back. Apparently, Drake's big plans never worked out. He'd burned through savings, if he ever had any, racked up debt, and was bouncing between dead-end jobs. The cherry on top? Maria's little influencer thing, the one she left me to pursue, had completely tanked. She'd been pushing sponsored posts for random products, but no brand wanted to keep working with someone whose engagement dropped to near zero. I'll admit, hearing it didn't bring me some huge rush of joy. I wasn't sitting there rubbing my hands together like a movie villain, but it was satisfying in that quiet, figures kind of way. These were people who thought they were trading up when they left me behind. Now they were sinking together. My friend also mentioned that Drake was back living with my dad. That made me laugh, but it also told me nothing had changed. Dad was still protecting him, still making excuses, still trying to salvage his precious golden child image. Meanwhile, I got a follow-up call from Dad. This time, he sounded like he was reading from a script. "Hey, son. Just wanted to check if you got my email. Everyone's really excited about the reunion. It's been way too long. I kept my tone neutral. Yeah, I saw it. So, you coming? I'm busy that weekend. He chuckled, like I'd made a little joke. Well, maybe you could rearrange some things. It'd mean a lot to the family. I know Drake would like to see you. There it was. The real reason. This wasn't about the whole family. This was about him trying to stitch things back together on his terms. Like if we were in the same room long enough, I'd magically forget everything Drake had done. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I just told him I'd think about it. The truth was, I had zero intention of showing up just to be their entertainment. But if keeping that door cracked meant I could get a better look at what was going on, then fine. I started digging a little more. Through a couple of people I trusted, I found out Dad had been telling relatives I overreacted to the whole Maria situation and that it's time to put the past in the past. Apparently, in his version of events, Drake hadn't really done anything wrong, yeah. Nothing really wrong with setting up your stepbrother to look like a cheater, filming it, and sending it to his girlfriend so she'd leave him. The more I learned, the more it became obvious that Dad wasn't reaching out to me because he missed me. He was doing it because Drake was drowning, and Dad didn't want to watch his favorite son go under without at least trying to secure a lifeboat. I kept my cool and didn't let on that I knew any of this. Let them think I was just busy with work. The truth was, I was stacking up information like bricks. If they wanted to invite me back into the circus, I was going to make sure I had a front row seat to watch the tent collapse. A week before the reunion, Dad called again. This time he pushed harder. Rob, you've been away too long. You've got a good life now. Now is time to share it with your family. That part almost made me laugh. He wasn't wrong. I did have a good life now. But the reason I had it was because I stopped sharing it with them. I told him I'd see what I could do, and we hung up. That night, I sat out on my back porch with a coffee, going over everything in my head. Drake broke me down once. Dad stood there and let it happen. Maria walked out without looking back. And now, years later, they wanted me to stroll into a reunion like nothing happened? If I did go, it wouldn't be for reconciliation. It would be for clarity, to see just how far they'd fallen, and to make sure they knew exactly who they were dealing with now. 5. At the end, I decided to go, and walking into that reunion felt less like a family event and more like a recon mission. I wasn't there to reconnect or make amends. I wanted to see where everyone stood, gather some dirt, and maybe plant a few seeds that would keep certain people squirming long after I left. My dad gave me the usual fake smile, the kind where the corners of his mouth moved, but his eyes stayed cold. Drake was planted right next to him, loud, animated, laughing like he was the most successful guy in the room. The man was dressed in a blazer 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled halfway up like he was some hotshot entrepreneur. The second he spotted me, his whole tone shifted. Suddenly he was grinning, acting like we were long-lost best friends, throwing out over-the-top compliments like he'd been rooting for me all along. It was pure bootlicking, and it was about as subtle as a fire alarm. Then there was Maria. She had her phone in her hand like it was glued there, scrolling in between forced laughs with whoever she was talking to. She saw me, froze for half a second, then shifted her body like she suddenly needed to inspect the dessert table. That reaction alone told me her life wasn't going exactly how she planned. The reunion played out the way I expected. Dad kept steering conversations away from anything that could lead to real questions. Drake floated around the room, dropping lines about big deals he was closing. I didn't bother engaging. I just let him dig his own hole. But it didn't take long before I started hearing things from the extended relatives. One cousin pulled me aside and said, "Hey, so you and Drake? You guys still doing that business thing together?" That stopped me cold. "What business thing?" I asked. He shrugged. "I don't know, man. Drake told me you two were partners, said you had a logistics operation, and that if anyone wanted in, they could invest through him. He even said you were too busy running things to deal with small investors, so he was the point of contact." 2 more people asked me similar questions before the night was over. That was enough confirmation. Drake wasn't just lying to puff himself up. He was running some kind of scam using my name. Apparently, word had gotten around that I was doing well. That's the only reason I can think of for why Maria decided to crawl back into my life. Out of nowhere, she sent a text, then a call, saying she'd broken up with Drake and had been thinking about the past. According to her, she realized she still had feelings for me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity won out. We agreed to meet at a coffee place near my office. She showed up dressed like she was going for some casual influencer vibe. Oversized sunglasses, high-waisted jeans, the whole thing. The conversation started with her pretending she just wanted to catch up. I let her ramble through small talk, nodding like I was buying it, until she finally got to the point she'd been wrong and wanted to start fresh. I leaned back, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "Hold on. Didn't you dump me because you thought I cheated on you? And now, years later, you're here acting like that never happened? You really think I forgot?" She blinked, then started, "But the video," I cut her off. "Yeah, the one I told you was fake. The one you knew was fake. I explained exactly what happened, and you still walked. So don't sit here now pretending you just figured it out." She shifted in her chair, muttering about how Drake had influenced her, that she made a mistake, and that I was being heartless. I laughed. "Maria, you're a gold digger. And honestly, I should thank Drake for showing me that before I ever married you." The look on her face was priceless, like she'd been slapped in public. She muttered something about me being pathetic, grabbed her bag, and stormed out. I didn't even bother looking up from my coffee. Later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she'd gone off about me in some group chat, claiming I humiliated her for no reason. But the story didn't land the way she hoped. Most people apparently just laughed at her. Meanwhile, Drake's little business partnership story was still circulating. This wasn't just harmless talk. I now knew for sure he was taking money from people under the pretense of investing with me. That was the kind of lie that could actually hit my reputation if I didn't shut it down. The next move was clear. I wasn't going to confront him directly. I'd keep my distance, gather every bit of proof I could, and take it straight to court. No shouting matches, no warnings, just paperwork, a courtroom, and the kind of hit that would make his fake confidence collapse overnight. The family reunion had been the perfect setup. He'd paraded around like the big shot he thought he was, and I'd quietly walked away with the ammunition I needed to end it. The game was about to shift, and this time, I wasn't playing defense. The first step was gathering proof. I didn't go in half-cocked. I wanted a case so airtight Drake wouldn't even have room to pretend it was a misunderstanding. I quietly reached out to the people he'd pitched his investment opportunities to, playing it casual so they wouldn't tip him off. A cousin handed me a printed partnership proposal Drake had given him. My name was plastered across the header like we'd been co-signing each other's dreams for years. That was all I needed to loop in my lawyer. Within 2 weeks, we had statements, screenshots, voice messages, the whole playbook of his scam. The fraud lawsuit practically wrote itself. A few months later, after he stalled, dodged, and tried every cheap trick in the book, we finally got a court date. When the papers got served, I imagined the look on his face, the kind of panic that hits when your fake empire suddenly starts showing cracks. And when the day came, I didn't say a word to him. The evidence spoke loud enough. The judge didn't just side with me. She tore him apart for dragging my name into his con. Since my lawyer had helped a few of his other investors join in, it turned into a joint civil case. By the time it was over, he owed restitution to every one of us, plus legal fees, and his reputation had taken another public hit. If Drake's finances were bad before, they went nuclear after that. I started hearing he was selling off my dad's stuff, tools, furniture, anything not nailed down. When that wasn't enough, he started hitting up my dad's friends for short-term loans, spinning sob stories about temporary cash flow problems. The problem with that? My dad's friends had enough pride to tell him what was going on. At first, Dad defended him. Same old script. He's just going through a rough patch. But after the fourth or fifth confrontation from people saying they weren't getting their money back, Dad's patience snapped. From what I was told, the blow-up was bad. Yelling in the driveway, neighbors watching, Dad telling him to pack his trash and get out. And just like that, Drake was on the curb with nowhere to go. A few days later, he reached out to me. Started off with the whole, "let's put the past behind us and be brothers again" routine. I could hear the desperation in every word. He wasn't looking to fix anything. He was looking for a roof over his head. That's when I decided to have some fun with it. I told him I'd be open to talking about it if he came over to my place. He agreed immediately, like I just offered him a winning lottery ticket. When the day came, I was ready. I had 2 discrete recording devices, one clipped inside my jacket and another running on my phone on the coffee table. We sat in my living room, away from the kitchen where the TV was on low. He tried easing in with small talk, clearly nervous. "Man, it's been too long," he said, faking a smile. I was thinking, maybe we could, start fresh? Start fresh? I raised an eyebrow. "You mean like the time you sent your friend to try to hook up with me while you filmed it?" He blinked fast, caught off guard, then smirked like it was some inside joke. "Hey, come on! That was years ago. You were going to marry Maria, and I had to make sure you weren't going to screw it up." "By screwing me over," I said flatly. He leaned back, grinning. "You didn't take the bait, So what's the big deal? Besides, you dodged a bullet. She's a nightmare. You should be thanking me. The big deal is you still went ahead and made it look like I did. And, oh, I am grateful, I said, keeping my tone calm. You basically told me she was a gold digger without saying it. He chuckled, thinking we were sharing some twisted laugh about the past. Exactly. I saved you. And hey, all that's behind us now. You've got money, well, I could use a little help right now, short term, just until I get back on my feet. There it was, the real reason for this conversation. Help, huh? I said slowly. And what do I get in return? He shrugged, trying to look casual. We're family. That's supposed to be enough. I let a beat of silence hang, pretending to think. I'll tell you what. Why don't we make things even clearer? Tell me exactly what you did to me back then. You know, for closure. He laughed like I was being dramatic, but then leaned in and laid it out. How he'd sent Anne to test me. How he was filming from the back. How he'd sent the clip to Maria knowing she'd dump me on the spot. That's pretty messed up, Drake, I said, keeping my face neutral. Inside, I was already picturing that audio clip landing in every family member's inbox. He waved it off. Like I said, it was for your own good. Sure, I said, forcing a smile. Thanks for clearing that up. The conversation ended soon after. He thought we just had a deep heart-to-heart. He didn't realize he'd just handed me the last piece I needed to end whatever shred of credibility he had left. Inside, I was already picturing that crisp, high-quality audio file sitting in my phone, ready to be sent to every family member who still thought Drake was just misunderstood. Next step? Making sure everyone heard the truth, straight from his own mouth. A couple weeks after that talk with Drake, there was another family dinner at my Aunt Janice's house. Different place, same circus. Dad's side was all there, uncles, aunts, cousins, and of course Drake. He looked like he'd slept in his clothes. Maria wasn't with him, which affirmed that she really bailed on him and left him. I came in calm, polite, shook hands, nodded at people I didn't care to see. Dad greeted me like we hadn't spent years ignoring each other. Glad you could make it, he said, like he'd done me a favor. Dinner went the usual way. Fake laughs, small talk, side whispers. I let it run its course before leaning back in my chair. You know, I said loud enough for the table to hear, I think it's time Drake finally shares his side of things. Heads turned. Drake froze halfway through cutting his food. What are you talking about? I smirked. The truth, Drake. The one you've been running from since you torched my relationship. Go on, be a man for once. I don't know what he started, but I pulled my phone out, pressed play, and set it in the middle of the table. His voice came out crystal clear. The room went dead silent. You could hear forks hit plates. Drake's jaw clenched, eyes darting around like he was searching for an escape route. You happy now? He muttered under his breath. Ecstatic, I said, leaning forward. You spent years trying to make me look like the villain. Turns out, you were just a cheap con artist with a camcorder. Dad shifted in his seat, eyes darting like he was searching for an escape hatch. I had no idea, he stammered, as if pretending ignorance could patch over years of damage. He knew. He'd always known. This was just him scrambling to save face now that the truth was out. I didn't yell, didn't gloat, just looked around the table and said, that's what he did to me. That's why I left. And that's why I'll never be part of this family again. Then I stood up, put my jacket on, and walked out before anyone could scramble to respond. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing with texts from cousins. Some were apologizing, some were asking for the full recording. I sent it to everyone who wanted it. By the end of the week, Drake's name was radioactive. No one wanted to hire him. The guy couldn't even land temp work because word had spread so fast. I heard he started couch surfing. Friends, old coworkers, anyone who'd let him crash. But he always got kicked out within days. The man had a gift for burning bridges. Weeks later, my phone rang. Dad. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. He skipped the small talk. I need your help, he blurted. I'm in trouble. Some guys are after me. Loan sharks. Drake forged my signature on a couple of high-interest loans. Now they're saying I'm on the hook and I can't pay it back. I didn't rush to fill the silence. Just let it hang there long enough for him to get uncomfortable. You're just gonna let them come after me? He finally asked, voice tightening. I leaned back in my chair. I warned you years ago. You covered for him every single time he screwed up. You made it clear who mattered more. Now you get to live with that choice. I'm your father, he snapped, like the word itself carried some magic authority. Yeah, I said, calm as ever. And you made sure to act like one for Drake only. So you can call him for help. Oh wait, I paused just long enough for it to sting. He's probably too busy hiding from the same people. He didn't have a comeback, just shallow breathing on the other end. Good luck, I finished, then hung up. I sat there for a moment, phone still in my hand. No guilt, no second thoughts. I didn't need some big emotional send-off or a heart-to-heart. My life had been better without them, and nothing about that call changed it. Still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. Seeing Drake squirm at that dinner, hearing Dad's voice crack now. After years of being the one left holding the bag, I finally got to watch them hold it themselves. And I can't think of a better ending than that.